Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Astro Imaging channel. My name is Molly, and you've come to join us tonight to hear from Mårten Frosth, who will be talking about doing astrophotography way up at 63 degrees north in the icy cold north of North Sweden. But before we get to Morton, we're going to, let's see. Actually, Dan, I forgot to ask, could you do like a quick 30-second summary of what you're going to talk about on the 15th so people will come back in 2 weeks?
Yeah, sure. So I'll be on, as Molly just said, in a couple of weeks. I'm going to be going through a basic Astro processing flow through PixInsight. We've had a lot of really leading people in the astrophotography community on the show. And Molly asked me to pop on to do a more of an amateur astrophotography process flow with one-shot color data. So I'll go through that and take any questions. Over.
Awesome, sounds great. Let me go ahead and share our calendar real quick so that we can see who else is coming up here for you guys to look forward to. Chrome tab. Where are you at? Calendar, share. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, we have Dan in 2 weeks, and in case you've not been around the channel lately, we have switched to doing first and third Sundays of the month with the occasional fifth Sunday of the month, depending on how many following Sundays are out of commission for various holidays and whatnot. So we are having somebody on the 29th as well, Frank Merrick of SETI Astro, come talk about his SETI Astro Suite Pro, which is another image processing software that incorporates a lot of interesting tools for you to check out. We are not going to broadcast on Easter, which is why we're doing the 29th instead, so everybody can enjoy their Easter holiday. And then we'll be back on April 19th with David Stern talking about narrowband processing with PixInsight scripts. Now, as you can see, we have several open dates after that, so I will give my usual plea to volunteer to give a talk if you would like to come on and talk about something. We've got all kinds of, there's so much to cover in astrophotography, and everybody knows something. And we've had a lot of advanced content in the last year or two, and I'd like to get back to doing some more beginner content as well, kind of intermixed. I think it's really good for us to have both. One last note here. We do have an important astronomical event happening this week, which is the total lunar eclipse, which will be on the night of the 2nd, morning of the 3rd. So here's, let's go here. Here's a map of where that will be occurring. So all the US will get some part of it, and the West Coast will be able to see the whole thing from start to end. And a bunch of the Pacific Ocean will be treated to it as well, and then ending in Eastern Russia and Japan and going over into China over there. So if you are, and of course all of our friends down in Australia as well. So a good opportunity for a lot of the world to be able to see the lunar eclipse on the night of the 2nd, morning of the 3rd. And let me go back and stop sharing. All right. Don't think I'm missing anything else. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Morton.
Martin, you will get the best view of any of us.
Yeah, I won't see anything. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen now also. Hope you can see that.
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah, my name is Mårten Frosth, and you did a very good job at pronunciation of my name. So
thank you.
You get a star for that. I live at 63 degrees north outside a small town called Örnsköldsvik in Sweden, the north part. It's in the high coast area. It's a national heritage area, and it's about 50,000 people here, so it's not very big at all. And it comes with its own set of challenges when we're talking about astrophotography. And I'm going to go through my little journey today. I started in astrophotography as late as 2021. So it's not that many years ago. That was the year I bought my first telescope actually, but I have been doing photography for about 20 years before that. And as soon as I'm interested in something, I go all in. So when I thought about photography, then I had to remodel the entire first floor of my house to be a photo studio with, painted everything white and changed the floor and, bought studio lighting equipment. And then I was like, okay, do I actually also need to have someone here that I can actually photograph? It's like with my home gym, you buy 5 machines and then it's like, oh, I'm not getting any fitter. Oh, do I actually have to use them also? And that's why I started building my observatory, because I got a little bit tired of going out in my boxer shorts or whatever at minus 30 Celsius at night, trying to get cables and stuff to work. So what are the 3 main challenges when we're talking about astrophotography in the cold? You have technology, you have a cold weather. Up here it's like in January, February. Right now we've been having minus 20, minus 30, and you have a lot of snow. So that's not always the nicest combination, even though it's very dry weather up here in the winter time. You don't have a lot of problems with dew and stuff like that. So that's one plus. But for those of you that wonder, what are the basic conditions up here? You can see here the annual darkness. We don't actually have any astro darkness from late beginning of April maybe until beginning of September or something like that. In the summer, you can't do any astrophotography. You can compare that to if you have shipped your telescope to Starfront, and that's the image to the right there. There you have darkness all year round. And then you say, well, it can't be that bad. You have to see something at night, 1 star or whatever. No, this is in the middle of the summer at 1 a.m. in the night. You can see me, thinking about giving up my life. No, not that bad, but it's not, you can't even see a single star. It's completely impossible. You can't do any astrophotography whatsoever. So what are the extra challenges? Well, we have the same challenges as everyone else around the world, and then you add some more. You have fog, you have satellites, you have full moon. Every time it's a clear night, you're thinking, oh, now I can image, and then you see, no, it's 99% moon. Or, oh, now it's going to be clear, now I can image. No, it's northern lights here. As you can see in the image to the upper right. It never fails. That's an image from my actual backyard, from my bedroom window, actually. I have 4 big windows to the north, so when I wake up in the middle of the night, when I know my observatory is open and I look out, it never fails. It's always northern lights. And at least I live in somewhat dark area if you compare to big cities or whatever. Stockholm, the capital of Sweden, you have 9 on the Bortle scale. Inside Örnsköldsvik city center up here, it's Bortle 7. And outside the city where I live, it's Bortle 4. So at least you can see the Milky Way with your eyes after being outside for a few minutes. So that's something positive. If we look at the map here over light pollution, you can see that This is the local, the red spot is the small town of Örnsköldsvik. So you can see that it's fairly dark around it. You don't have to drive that far to go to a portal 3, and you can also drive to a portal 2 zone if you want, if you drive like 2 hours. But as I'm going to show later on, it's not really something that I want to do, drive out in the middle of the night. I also do some normal. I try to keep it photographing with a normal camera when I can, because like I said, there are a lot of northern lights up here. Also northern lights that come straight above you. So every time when it's just a minor solar event, it could look something like this up here, or like this image that I took just a few weeks ago. This is my neighbor's house, me standing outside looking. A 4-second exposure, you can see the whole sky is green here. So it's very tough to do any astrophotography through that northern lights. I use a kind of basic equipment. I actually have the same telescope that I bought the first time, the Skywatcher Evo Star 80 ED refractor. I think it's fairly good, although, you know, you always want to buy something nicer. It would be great to have like an SQA 106 or something like that if you want to spend $4,000 or $5,000 on a telescope. And that sounds good in theory, and then you're doing the math on how many hours of use do I have of this up here, and then you're thinking about all of the other things you could use the money for. But I think I will get there eventually. I also have a monochrome camera, the Poseidon M Pro, and that's a very good camera, I think. And with that, the Phoenix wheel with 7-inch filters, and those are also fairly good, even though they are 7-nanometer filters. I have everything in my home observatory. I'm going to go through a little bit of me building that. I made it with a fairly large concrete pier that weighs about 500-600 kilograms of concrete or something like that. We're coming into explaining how to do that in a good way. If you're living up here with the frost-free depth is like 1.7 meters or something like that. And everything is automated in the observatory. I have a flat panel on the wall there. I have my miniature PC, and everything is controlled through my home automation system that I might show you a little bit of. And when I'm doing my landscape photography, I use the Sony A7 IV camera and the Sony FE 16mm 1.8 lens mainly. And then I have some video equipment, because making YouTube videos, as I have my own YouTube channel as well, that's also a big part of the hobby. You can throw endless amounts of money on that area as well if you want, when you're thinking about, oh, I just need that little gimbal, I need those studio lights, I need this and that, and then you're like, oh, how can you pay $100 for a small little gadget just because it says small rig on it? And that's the reality. So I started like this. This is my daughter. You can probably figure out that I'm from the original TV game generation, when you know that her name is Zelda. She's 12-year-old now, and this is how it's started. The first season. This is the first winter, autumn around Christmas 21, and I was setting up outside. I had to, you can see the amount of snow. This is not a lot of snow for northern part of Sweden, although it's like 30-40 centimeters of snow. So you really have to do a lot of shoveling to get something going, and the cables are not so nice to handle. And I decided early that if I'm going to continue in this hobby, you're not in the best of shape maybe, and you're getting older, and I'm not going to carry this thing inside and out every day. And I really want to maximize the number of I want to maximize the clear nights, I should say. So that's when I looked at that little patch of land in the backyard, or in the front of the house, actually, because that is towards the south for me. And I thought, yeah, I really need to build an observatory. So this is the first summer after I bought the telescope. I started with the concrete pier. I have a lot of videos on this if you want to go through the whole journey. I think I will say in the end of the presentation, I made like 106 hours of building video recording material or something like that when I did it. So I had to go down for at least 1.5 meters and 500 kilos of concrete or something, 1,000 pounds. And I started with a pier, and then I built a small frame. What I didn't know back then was that I started with a miniature observatory. I still have that. I thought, well, I don't want to make a huge building here. Even though this is outside city planning area, you don't have to jump through that many bureaucratical hoops to build something. I thought, well, I don't want to put up a big building here, so I started with a small one. If I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't do a building that I can't walk into standing up. Right now I have to kind of crawl into my observatory. Thank God I don't have to be in there that often. I was thinking about insulation back and forth like that. I don't really want any insulation. I don't have any on the sides of it at all, but in case I ever did want to do it, I did everything in the base as building codes states. So it's airtight and insulated. I also made conduits in the bottom, in the floor of the observatory. You can see that I made a yellow conduit there that is actually going inside the concrete pier and up the pier. So I don't need to have any cables whatsoever. Maybe you can see it in this image, the small hole on the top of the concrete pier there. That's where all of the cables are going to come up. Nothing will be dangling over the floor or something like that. And I made a small little box for electronics, a computer and electrical outlets and stuff like that. And that continues into my garage later. I also started looking around to making it fully automated. I think this motor is something that a lot of people are using. It's a standard gate motor, but very powerful. I think you can move about 1.5 tons, 1,500 kilos or something with this motor. I wanted to integrate this with my home automation system. So if you're buying a motor like this, make sure you have some control inputs that you can hook up to a normal relay of your choice. I'm using Z-wave relays, and I'm using a home automation system. Right now it's a Homey, but if you have a Fibro or whatever home automation system, that could also work, because you don't want to go out to the observatory at all. The only thing I need to do today is, I don't have an automated lens cap removal if you're not sending the Wi-Fi out. But that could be problems on other levels that you want to avoid. So either you have it off, or you buy something really expensive like you have today. You have flat panels with that you can use for lens caps, or I usually keep it off all the time if it's not bad weather, or if I'm going to use it for a long period of time. When it comes to the actual building up here, I'm not, I'm interested in things like that, renovation. I've renovated a few houses, completely renovated a few houses and stuff like that. So I'm not foreign to building things, but I didn't actually start with a plan, which can be a good thing. You can see the beams of the roof section there. I built everything from scratch, and I simply just started with some kind of measurement that I wanted to have, and then I just started building, which is maybe not the greatest idea to start with, but it works. You always need more space than you think, I would say. You can see that there's a birch tree there, and that was a little bit of a controversy. I thought it would be a simple thing just to remove it, but it was very, very big, so I had to have someone professional to come over. And if you look to the right of that, you see an electrical pole where the actual power to the houses go. So I couldn't really cut it down myself, and it turned out that that tree was also not on my property, because the property ends in the ditch there. So it was 20 centimeters outside my property or something. So what I thought would be the easiest thing in the build ended up with being a negotiation involving like 3 of my neighbors, and 3 weeks or something. So that's something good to think about if you're living in an area with people and you have trees blocking that you don't know if you can get rid of or not. I kind of wanted to get the whole building very stiff, not to move at all. It turned out that my roof was going to be very heavy, which is good and bad. It's good for the Swedish weather, because you need something very, very sturdy to be able to handle all of the snow, and you don't have to worry about the thing blowing off or something like that. Very close to the coast here, and we get a lot of wind, so I wanted to build it very heavy. So the roof now is several hundred kilograms in total in weight. You can't even lift it yourself, and that requires a very good support structure. You don't want the entire observatory to move when you're opening and closing the door. I wanted to have a metal roof, and that for a few reasons. I wanted it to look exactly like the house. That's why it has the paneling that it has. It's a little bit old-fashioned. You could do it cheaper, I would say, also, but I wanted it to blend in. It was kind of funny when I was building it. A few of the neighbors were walking by every day in the summer, and they asked, so, why are you building a roof on the kids' playhouse that you can remove? And I said, no, this is not the kids' playhouse. This is the dad's playhouse. So I had to make some custom metal sheets here to cover the side gaps. So when you're opening and closing the roof here, you don't get any wind and dirt and rain and snow or something into the observatory. Then, of course, you have the two other sides. We're going to come into that later. There are some challenges with snow and wind, because however you are trying to do it, you're always going to have some kind of opening somewhere to be able to open and close the roof. I also had to reinforce the position with the motor, because it's a very, very heavy roof, like I said, and the motor has a lot of torque in it. So what I initially thought was going to be just, you know, a few simple wooden planks to hold the motor, that didn't work out so good. So I actually had to reinforce this a lot, because when I was opening and closing, the structure was moving a little bit, or a lot, which is fine for something you need to do a few times, but when you're doing it regularly, that will be a bad thing. I also made sure that apart from cables in the floor, I made the appropriate channeling with conduits for electronics and everything inside the walls, so I don't have to have any cables. And it's always good to have extra when you're doing these kind of things. You don't know it beforehand, but you really do need more electrical outlets and conduits for things, controlling things, and cables. And as I'm going into a little bit more later, I didn't want to have any wireless things whatsoever out to the observatory. I wanted everything to be wired. So if I'm controlling the motor with a Z-Wave relay, which is a wireless relay, that relay is in the garage in the back of the picture here. And from the garage to the observatory, everything runs through the yellow conduit that you see here that runs all the way into that main building. So I didn't want to rely on anything wireless out here. So it's also a gigabit LAN out here and everything like that. The actual controllers for the roof, if you've seen a motor like this before, then you know that you probably are working with magnetic contacts, and I'm also using that, although I added some extra contacts for this to be able to place them somewhere where I thought it was more appropriate. But the original ones are still in the motor, and I just connected extra to those connectors. I see some people moving them or placing the motor somewhere where you can use the original ones. And then I have a small video here of the roof actually opening and closing. You can see that I added some molding, or, you know, I don't know what it's called in English, but in that thing you add to make it a little bit not airtight, but, you know, avoid getting some insects and things like that. So it's a little bit of a challenge, because you still have a little bit of a small hole in the front there. I had to extend the bar for the gear, because of the fact that I wanted to extend the roof beyond the wall of the observatory. And this is the second thing that I would change right now, because the original plan was that the roof wasn't going to be that big. You can see now that it is very big. And that is a little bit of a problem because the telescope sits quite low in here, and my view to the west here is somewhat obscured by this roof, which is not great. So that is something that I would redo if I'm rebuilding this. And I'm thinking about version 2 of my observatory, or perhaps building another one if I can find a suitable location on the property. Another thing is cables. When you're dealing with a cold climate, you don't really want cables at all, but it's a necessary evil. You have to have cables, but you want them as short as possible, and you don't want them to move at all. So I've actually made all my cables, and I made them as short as possible. So if I needed 10 centimeters of cables, I made the cables 10 centimeters. So I wouldn't have to have too much cabling, and that I also know or knew that the cables aren't going to move anything. So some cables actually have to move, of course, and that's the cable to the mount. But all of the cables on the actual telescope package, it's stationary. So right now I have one USB cable and one power cable going to the telescope and into the pier. And you can see that on this image. That's the only cable that is moving, and it doesn't need to move that far, so it just swings from left to right. And there's no other cables, as you can see, in the observatory whatsoever. Everything is neat and tidy on the telescope. I think that's key if you live in a cold climate, when cables are allowed to swing around, and especially when it's -30, they will disconnect and stuff like that. One thing that I noticed this winter, because it's the first with the Poseidon camera and this big filter wheel. I had a ZWO filter wheel before this, and it was much smaller. And I think the power for that, the requirements were a lot less. So I noticed that at -30, it had a bit of a rough time switching positions. And that was due to the fact that I had it hooked up to the secondary port on the camera there. And it wasn't just delivering enough amps for the motor to turn it in that temperature.
Martin,
So yes?
can you tell us about, I suppose that's a camera up there and
Yep.
a flat panel. Are
Yep.
you going to tell us about that later, or can you do it now?
Yeah, I can show you. That's actually this camera that you can see now.
Okay.
So I have a camera in the observatory. Well, I have cameras all around the house because first I'm interested in the technology, and of course I want to be able to see what's happening in the observatory.
You of course are sitting in the house
Yeah.
with what kind of a connection is running out there? A Cat 6 or something going out to the back?
Yeah,
Connect the network.
Yeah, it's a Cat 6A out there,
6.
gigabit LAN out to.
Okay.
And all of my. Yep.
And your flat panel, what is it? How did you make that?
The flat panel is not something I made myself. That's actually a Flatmaster 150. It's just a piece of cloth over it, just not to make it so bright. I
Okay.
had some problems with the first camera, the flat panel, even in its lowest setting, it was actually a bit too bright for me. When you're taking flats with narrowband, you want to have longer exposures.
Thank you.
Especially, I had the ASI 294 Pro camera, and that was a notorious camera for not wanting any exposures below like 3 seconds or something. So when you were taking broadband filter flats and you wanted the exposure time to be above 3 seconds, then you couldn't have any brightness whatsoever on the flat panel, I would say. I don't have the same problem now with this camera, but I haven't done anything to that. One advantage shows also for using this setup where I don't touch anything is that I can reuse my flats. I don't have to take flats every time.
Thank you.
So this is the view in my little electronics box. You could think that, if it's -30, you would need some special equipment. Computer-wise, this is actually a B-Link miniature PC that I bought of Amazon. I think it's a Core i3 or something like that. So it's not super slow, but it's not super fast. But it still works fine. I've had it outside now every day since summer 2022, and it still boots and works even in -30 and everything like that. But I also cover this little hole in the floor, and it's insulated also. So the heat from the electronics here keeps it a little bit warm, I would say. And like I also said earlier, it's not so humid in the winter time here, so that works out fairly good. And I have 2 outlets in here. One outlet that is always on because I'm using Wake on LAN for starting the computer. It's not on all the time, and if you're using Wake on LAN, you have to have power to the computer. If you cut the power completely, then you would have to turn it on with the button. There's probably other solutions for that, but everything costs money. So the other one is controlled through my home automation. So I actually turn the power off to the mount and camera and everything. And that's fed through here. I have a 12-volt 10-amp transformer in there for powering everything, and it works fine. It never uses, even when it's cooling to -35 or something like that.
Martin,
Yep.
one solution I have found to that problem of turning the computer on and off remotely is a simple smart plug, like Wise makes them and various other companies, or Ring makes them. It does mean you're going to have to break your rule about having everything wireless, or nothing wireless rather. But that you should be able to, go from your house back to there on your house's wireless network, I should think, or something close to that.
Yeah.
But you can turn on the switch, you can turn on the power from the inside the house, or you can get yourself one of those power outlet boxes that are hardwired in.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually do. I use when I said I use wireless I don't use wireless out there. I don't. I use wireless in the house, of course. I have a Ubiquiti access points. I actually have 3 of them, and this is the home automation, and everything is controlled wirelessly. But that's inside the house. So this is the observatory out there. So here I can turn on and off everything individually. I have a heater. I have a fan in the summer. This is the outlet that is sitting in the box there, and this is the roof. And this is the PC, the wake on lawn. And then I also have
Okay.
a sensor here for temperature and everything. So right now you can see that it's -6 degrees Celsius outside, and it's 72%. So that's very dry, I would say, for winter. So everything can be controlled from there. And I could open the roof here if I wanted now. It's actually clear outside, but the seeing is not so very good. So I'm taking my phone now, and I'm going to open the roof. You can see that it is opening on the camera. I have my lens cap on right now, so, and I don't see any stars, but I think it is, but it's also almost full moon, so a little bit of ice crystals that the IR is catching on the camera. So I'm going to close that so we're not having any problems while we are doing this presentation. But you can see that it's fairly easy to keep track of it. And I also want to have that camera because the one thing I haven't built yet is fully automation with Nina and the roof. So I actually don't have any fail safes right now. And that means that Nina doesn't know if the roof is open or closed. I actually have all the things. I haven't just built it into the observatory. I have some extra sensors. I have a small Raspberry Pi, and it's programmed, but you know, you get a little bit lazy when it works, and you also want to sit there and actually see that the telescope is parked, because I have it in the park position now, and if it's not in this position, if it's in the home position and you're closing the roof, then you will crash into. And if you have a motor that can handle 1.5 tons and a roof weighing several hundred kilograms, then your telescope is not going to survive. So polar alignment and stuff like that, I actually just do it once every season. I kind of take my equipment inside at the end of the season. I can't use it anyway. Thinking about getting a solar scope or something like that that I can use during the summer instead. But right now I'm doing a polar alignment at the start of the season, and that holds very good, I would say. I'm still also using the old HEQ5 Pro mount, but I'm going to upgrade as soon as Ming from ML Astro finishes his SAL 66 mount that he's working on this prototype for. Then I'm going to buy that, I think. Maybe also with the robotic polar alignment, but I actually don't need that because I just do it one time or once every season, and this concrete pier never moves at all. So yeah, and I have a camera, as I said earlier. And this is me inside hooking up the connections out there. Wireless gigabit, not wired gigabit LAN, and these are the Z-wave relays for the electrical outlets sitting out there, and I also have other relays for the gate motor, and I have its own power over Ethernet switch for the camera out there and for other cameras around the house. You also want to see if someone, you know, I haven't had any problems whatsoever with someone stealing the equipment or whatever. The observatory is locked, but you know, It's a lock that you can open with a crowbar in 10 seconds if you want to. So you want to have some security equipment. Most of it, everyone living here knows that I have a telescope in there. Maybe they don't know what the equipment is worth. It doesn't look like much, but even so, it's very expensive equipment. I'm using Nina. I didn't start out with that. I started out with Astrophotography tool and my Canon DSLR, actually. I thought that was great, but I didn't go with that for too long. Like with everything else, I'm, all or nothing kind of person. So I used that for maybe 2 or 3 months before I bought the first Astro camera. And I also went monochrome right away. I didn't buy a color camera. So I think it works fine. Moving into some snow related, you can see the picture here. You don't want it to look like this when you come out or in the morning. But this is the reality here. A lot of strong winds and a lot of snow. Those in combination, a lot of snow is not so bad. Well, you can't image when it's snowing, but if you have a lot of wind also, then snow finds its way in everywhere. It this is my house after a snowstorm, and you don't want to have snow that sticks everywhere, because then you're going to have it inside the observatory. So this is the routine that I have to have every day. You want to keep the roof cleared. I think power-wise, it can handle it. You can open and close it, but I don't want to risk snow falling into the observatory when I'm opening the roof. And you don't want to put extra strain on the motors if you don't have to. So I would say it's a good thing to clear snow off the roof. But it's built, you can jump on it if you want to. It's not like a flimsy roof with just one piece of metal. So it can handle the weight. One crucial thing, though, is, the support structure. If I had to redo something today, I'm using 8 wheels, which is enough, I would say. Each wheel was rated at a couple of 100 kilos or something like that. So the weight is not an issue, but it's just sitting on the observatory and the support structure. There's nothing actually hindering the roof from being lifted off. I added some safety features after finishing it, but if I had to do it all over again, I would probably choose wheels that were inside something, that couldn't go up or down. Right now, I also need to make sure that the gear is engaging enough. Since it's just sitting on there, it can actually move a little bit. I have some pieces of wood here. You can't see it so clearly in these pictures, but there's an L shape on these wooden beams. So the roof is actually sliding inside that. It can't move to the sides. But in the beginning, I had to adjust these to make sure that it was engaging properly. And you also need to make sure that these are clean. There can't be any ice or snow on it, risking that I've never had an issue with the roof whatsoever, but I also kept this clean You could probably put some electrical heaters or whatever in there, keeping it clean from snow, but I don't find it to be that big of an issue if you just keep it so it won't build up a lot of ice, especially in springtime when you have a lot of snow and then it melts a little bit in the sun and then it freezes during the night. Then it's almost impossible to remove. You have to be out there with, warm water and things. And in the beginning, I also realized that you can see that there are a few gaps here in the front. I have to, fill that hole with a piece of cloth or something if it's very windy and snow at the same time. And if it's very, very windy, I also get a little bit scared. At least I did the first year. And, took an extra strap here to just secure the roof, but it hasn't moved a millimeter. If I review the camera recording from all night, even if it's storm with 25 meters per second winds, the roof isn't moving. It isn't even vibrating. So
Martin, one of the things that we did on our observatories is like that picture you're showing right now. If you were to put a angle iron, a 90-degree angle iron all the way along just next to the wheels, and then take from the wall, you just make a simple iron clamp. It comes up, turns the corner, and it sits on top, then not even touching, a centimeter away from that iron, the iron rail that you just put in there, the right angle. Basically, the wind can't pick it up, because it just can't pick it up. It hits that as it tries to go up. That's one of the ways we've solved that problem.
Yeah, I'll probably do something like that. If maybe I'm just tearing this one down and building a new one. I also like to build things, so we'll see. I also had some issues with, since the frost-free depth here is a meter or a meter plus a meter and a half. You have to go below that for the ground not to move. And for the support structure here, the soil is clay, basically, and it's not very good. So that actually moves a bit. I planned the observatory and the concrete pier very well, I would say. But then when it was coming to support structure, I just put some anchor screws in the ground and just put it up. And that wasn't the best idea because these have moved a little bit. So I have to check them and realign them a couple of times a year. And the last summer, I actually dug out a lot of around them and insulated extra. So this year it hasn't moved so much. But yeah, I would advise making sure that you are at frost-free depth or insulating a lot, making sure that these things don't move whatsoever. I thought I'd show some pictures also. One of the goals that I had before starting in this hobby, I had an old colleague that was into photography, and he built an observatory, and an automated one, and he took some pictures, and he won the Astronomy Picture of the Day award. And I thought, when I started in this hobby, I said, well, I'm also going to have that one day. And it didn't take that long. I actually got it in the summer of 23. So 1.5 years after starting, I actually won that. But, I don't know how the process for selecting pictures for that is, how hard it is or how not hard or whatever. At least I have one, and if you have one, you want two, and you want 10. So, but I only have one at the moment. The Fisheye Nebula, the fish head. I actually tried to. One of my philosophies has always been, I want to have nice images. I'm not expecting to make finished pictures every time I'm using the telescope. You get greedy, do I have 5 hours? I want 10 hours. Oh, 10, I want 15. Do I have 15? I want 20 hours, So most of my pictures are around 20 hours, I would say. Like this jellyfish here, 25 hours. The Heart Nebula that I'm using as the background here, it's almost 20. This is also a reprocessing that I made because, in the beginning, you don't know much about processing, and then you watch hundreds and hundreds of hours of people like Adam Block and Nico, and and you try to learn to process images, and then you find out that the secret to everything is in the stretching, and you try to use the latest tools, and that's not always all so cheap also, but when you think you have got the most out of your image when you're just starting out, you're only seeing 20% of what you can see, I would say. The Rice Hat, 32.6 hours. I think this is one of the pictures with most integration. Most of these are with the ASI 294mm Pro, so not even APS-C size sensor. So a little bit limited. These are also with the ZWO 7nm filters. Those were not really good. The Wizard, 23 hours. The Garlic, or the Brain, or whatever they want to call it, 20 hours. I always had an issue with halos with those filters, but I kind of learned how to process them, the halos of the stars. This is my picture of the lemon. This was actually taken with just the normal camera, my Sony, and the 90mm macro lens. So this is a 4-minute integration of the comet, just my 90mm. This was the first image with my Poseidon camera, 17 hours of the veil, and I was very pleased with that. A lot of details that I could get out of it. The fossil footprint, also 17. Elephant trunk here, 13.5 hours. The flaming star I also did recently, 19 hours. And the latest image that I just published today, I finished the video earlier today and published this picture with the tadpole, the spider, and the fly, 20 hours. And I have a lot of interesting details in here. So for the 24-25 season, I had 45 imaging sessions and 190 hours of integration time. I don't save images or data that I can't use or that is bad. So this is after selection. So 2,283 light frames. I really also am a statistics nerd, so and I also have statistics for every single filter, and I had about 50 frames per session in general if you add everything out, and about 207 per object in average. So far, if you compare last season, I had 183 hours to this date. And this season, I only have 109 hours of data after selection. So it's not a very good season, I would say. And like I said, the observatory, how long did it take to build it? I don't know. I have 106 hours of recorded material, but it took 3 or 4 months during the summer. And I also went on a 3-week road trip in Europe during that time. So in total, I've had 143 sessions and 635 hours, 8,756 light frames, to be precise, as of today. But sometimes it's just nice to walk outside and look up here, because it's always northern lights. That was my last slide.
All right. Did we get any questions on YouTube? Alex, whoever was
Pardon
watching.
me? Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, there are no questions. There were a few comments and people arguing about the value of having snow around. And Tarek is going, "What's snow? What's snow? What is snow?" Hi, Tarek. Anyway, so there we are. Tarek lives in the UAE, the Arab Emirates. So
We also had somebody wondering whether you had a son named Link.
No, my son is. I actually thought about that because I have a son. He is 10 and my daughter is 12, and my daughter is named Zelda, and my son is named Tintin. And I don't know if it's that known over there, but that's what's also a comic book character.
Sounds familiar, vaguely.
Yes.
So
I was impressed with the just the quality of the wood. It
Yeah.
doesn't look like we get down at Home Depot. It's straight, it's clean,
Yeah.
it's very few knots and weirdnesses. Pretty nice wood.
Yeah, that's because we grow it here in the backyard, and the
That's where that tree you cut down went, huh?
yeah. Actually, you export the one of the biggest companies here, SCA. You probably never heard of that, but they cut down and they sell the pine tree woods that's from the core. They export that. 90% of it sells to Japan or something like that. They buy the highest quality. So this is the low quality, but even that is good because the sawmills that makes this, it's around the corner up here.
Nice.
And congratulations on your APOD, and all your images are very nice, very
Yeah.
nice. All
Thank
the
you.
ones you showed us. You might have some bummers back there, but all the ones you showed us were very, very good. I like it.
I didn't show you the early ones. I have everyone on my webpage if you want to watch the absolute first one of the Andromeda Galaxy. But
so I'm curious, being so far north where 2/3 of the sky is circumpolar, do you even worry about setting times?
no, well, I have some obstacles. I have some trees. I can see fairly low. It's always all around except for where the observatory roof is. I can see above like 20 degrees or something like that. And you don't want to image below that anyway, because
Sure.
the atmosphere seeing it's so bad. But it kinds of, some objects they come up really fast and they go down really fast, like the Orion and stuff like that. For
Yeah,
me,
anything in
I
the
have
south.
to plan it for a few hour window.
Are you ever going to do a Messier marathon up there? How far down can you go?
I can get 1/3 of the objects.
Now, if I know myself correctly, if I start something like that and I can't finish it, I have to move and build a house somewhere else or something.
You just have to come down to Starfront.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that. When I get to be a millionaire, if I win the lottery, I will buy an extra rig and send out there. But it's also a little bit of cheating, I think. You know, if you have two rigs, if you have the one at home, and you say this is the hard work images, and then you can here I also have images that I took in
Yeah.
Star that I can show you. But that's not the same. It's not the same kind of work behind it.
No, once you get used to a remote observatory, you stop thinking that way.
I'm doing remote now. I almost never touch the thing out there. You know, it wouldn't matter to me if it's at Starfront or here, but I still have to shovel snow and take care of it and make sure it's working and stuff like that. And that also, it's a bit of the fun.
We might have to work on definitions.
I think it's a money question. You know, you always come down to that. You know.
Yeah, for sure.
And one thing I don't recommend, if you want to have money left when you're getting older to buy telescopes, don't get a divorce. That's like I did 2.5 years ago. That negatively impacts your hobby, I would say. Definitely.
I imagine so.
Mm.
Anything else come in over YouTube?
Martin, what mount were you going to get? I heard you mention it, but
Yeah, I'm thinking about, or I'm actually going to buy I don't know if you have been following the journey from ML Astro, Ming, who is making the SAL 33 that everyone is buying right now. It's a harmonic drive mount that he has been building and selling that has gotten very good reviews. It's a lot cheaper than it's sold for $1,000, so half price of the ZWO AM5 and a lot better. And he is actually making a observatory grade version called the SAL 66. That's mlastro.com. It's not out yet there, but it's going to be very big, and it's going to be able to handle loads over 25 kilograms or something like that. So I want to have a very big, even though I'm probably not going to buy a super expensive telescope, but I want to have something good. If I'm swapping out my mount now, I want to have a good one.
Have you thought about this? Have you thought about the implications of that roof? Because that roof barely clears as it is now. You get much bigger equipment, you're going to have to reconsider.
Yeah, I can actually lower it quite a bit because the pier has 20 centimeters at least of iron that I can cut off, so I can lower it down.
It's not exactly killer hard to add wall height either. It can be done.
Yeah, I'm thinking about completely remaking a roof structure that incorporates extra wall maybe or something like that, so I can actually walk into the observatory. That I said earlier, if I would have built it today, I would have built something that I can actually walk into, because I also have back problems. I have herniated discs in my lower back, and it's not great to have to crawl in and out of this that small little hatch that I have.
Yeah. Any other questions here in the room?
I was just wondering, Morton,
no, we're good.
have you thought about using an Ethernet powered switch out there for your power?
Ethernet powered switch.
Ethernet enabled.
Sorry, Ethernet enabled. So
Like a IP addressable switch.
A data logger or
the
remote outlet.
Yeah.
If you
sounds like you've got that. It sounds like you're using your home automation to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, that one screen you showed us were all the devices that you could switch on and off while you're sitting in your house and they're out in the observatory, right?
Yeah, exactly. You have.
Yeah,
this is the entire house. So all of my house, I can control every single outlet, every lamp, every fan, everything in the house. I also have temperature sensors in every room and everything.
So you just have to work it out so that you don't your devices out there are not dependent upon your computer, and then you can turn your computer on and off as you like. I've got a problem with my observatory on my SX35 camera, is that as long as the computer is on and the camera is connected to its USB port, the fan runs. You can't turn the fan off. I mean, I can get switchers for it and stuff like that, but I don't want to complicate it anymore. So I'm going to buy a new camera.
Yeah.
It's one solution, but you can't turn the fan off.
Yeah. Well, everything works fine for me now, I would say. It's just that one issue. If I have a power outage, and that's something most of you might not be used to, but up here we have, the infrastructure is not great, even though we produce all of the electricity in Sweden up here, with the rivers and the water power and everything. So the electricity is fairly cheap, but we also have a lot of infrastructure that is vulnerable, going through woods and stuff like that. So we have power outages, every 2-3 months up here.
Do you have a battery backup if your roof is stuck open during a power outage?
That's something that I actually don't have. If I were to have a power outage and I needed to close the roof, if it started snowing or whatever, raining, then I would need to go out and release and close it manually.
Yeah, but you've got a great advantage. Your house is right next to the place. My observatory's a 70-mile drive from here. It takes me an hour and a half to get there. So I've got to be very careful that I've got some backups out there. When you have a real remote observatory, particularly if it's running remotely, like mine, I run it from here and all the commands go out there, but I'm watching it the whole time. But if my power were to fail in the middle of the night, I might have to go out in the morning. I might have to drive an hour and a half to get there. You got to walk out the back door, put your boots on, and walk out the back door.
Yeah, exactly. If I were far apart from it, I would have added the fail safes, and I would definitely have some kind of battery backup. Yeah.
Okay.
Alrighty. I think with that, we will go ahead and call it an evening, and then we'll let you take a nap before you go to work. It's very early where you are.
It's 4:43 in the morning.
Well, again, we appreciate you so much coming on at this very, very late hour to come talk to us. And I think we all enjoyed your presentation. And if you ever want to come back on, let me know.
Sure, it was great coming on. So just let me know if you have any other questions, or we'll see about some other time. I also do some processing videos and stuff like that. I think of myself as a rookie as well. I'm not one of the advanced ones. I can't speak 17 hours on stretching like Adam Block can do.
Nobody can do that but Adam Block. And I posted the link to his YouTube channel in the description there, as well as Morton's website. I think we'll call it a night there. Join us again in 2 weeks for Dan Moomey talking about beginner processing in PixInsight on one-shot color data. And I think with that, have a good night. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Take us out.
Martin. Have a good night.
Hey.